Let's dive in and talk a little bit about the record. First of all, lots and lots of life has been lived, obviously, since you last made a record or did anything in the sort of realm of rehearsal, ready to tour. What was your experience like for the last 2 years? I know it's near impossible to put into words and
Right. To sum it all up. The first thing that I always think of is how I remember when I didn't quite realize that this was going to be a marathon and not a sprint. My actions were quite different than what they became. As you can imagine, I mean, I'm quite fortunate in the sense that my job is to make art, to make music. And when we found out that we were in fact not going to be going on tour in April of 2020, initially it was just kind of like school's out forever,
right.
freaking out, like having a great time, maybe too much of a good time. And then, there's something about the lack of structure, and nowhere really to take that energy, where it just became dark energy, to be honest with you. It wasn't enjoyable to have all of this freedom and to sort of like take that for granted. So I think eventually I just started realizing like, hey, I need to figure out my own structure, which is also part of what we do. I mean, we're sort of, any artist or anyone who's in the freelance realm, you kind of have to get good at doing that to get anywhere regardless. So I kind of knew how to get myself into that realm. I think another thing, I guess, in particular to the band, we realized that this is a pretty unique scenario to be in, that in terms of like speaking to one another and being honest and working on our relationships, this was probably the best we were going to get, in terms of having space and time to heal and to really say honest things to one another. So we brought in a professional and started working on our relationships. And
did you do that via Zoom? Was it a Zoom thing?
We did. Yeah. Zoom.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. We've actually never met our therapist.
Great.
Maybe I think she's real. I think we did that. No, but I don't know. It was a well-needed thing, I mean, it's been almost 12 years now that this band has been together, and it was the first time that we really had time to do that, which is crazy. I mean, if you imagine being married for 12 years and never really once admitting that there was something wrong, I mean, it's just unrealistic, so.
Right. Who in the band do you think had the most trouble sort of expressing their true feelings?
Oh, wow. Everyone but me. I'm just kidding. No, I think the most interesting thing about it all was just everyone was sort of dealing with trauma in a way, but in their own very different way of handling it. Some of us are workaholics where, like you take something and you just bury yourself in your work, and you think your actions are showing what your intentions are, and you're like, well, I'm putting up my end of the bargain. Like what's going on? And others are really waiting until we have a conversation before they pick up the rope.
Yeah.
And to someone who was constantly, you've got somebody waiting to pick up the rope, and you see them as like, this person's lazy, they're not invested. And you charge ahead with the worst energy you could bring them. Yes. So, whether to really say who had the toughest time to present their own true emotions, I'm not sure that I can really honestly answer that. It was just a complex thing. I mean, we learned a lot about ourselves and how to better listen to one another. One of the main things I think as artists and as songwriters through, especially 2020, it wasn't really a prolific year for me as a writer. I tried to become a better listener. There were a lot of things happening around me that I didn't have the greatest understanding of. There's just no way for me to have, with protests and social injustice and things like that it just felt like a time to shut up and listen, and
Right.
partake if you can, accept that you're not going to understand everything immediately,
Right.
and
Right.
try not to put your foot in your mouth and just be a listener, and
That's a
if you
great.
can
Yeah, I
help
think
out, help
that's a
out.
great
Yeah.
way of dealing. I think that the idea of being just let me just observe and listen and absorb,
Mm-hmm.
rather than inject whatever I think at the moment. And it was. I mean, I don't think you're alone in that. I mean, I think that everybody watched this, a lot of this happen, and those of us here in the Minneapolis, St. Paul, watched it happen in our own backyard, and it was surreal, and it was completely how much news to absorb and engage in, and when to say I think my brain can't handle anymore, or and having to still, like we were kind of talking about, still having to kind of come in and do my job
Right.
while literally things were on fire was very strange, and you couldn't help but think, is what I'm doing frivolous and not important?
Right.
And then you really started to look for what was important
Right.
in it.
Well, very well said. Wow. Yeah. You nailed it. Yeah.
Has your
Yeah.
therapist ever worked with a band before?
Interestingly, no.
Yeah. I mean, relationships are relationships, and I get that.
Yeah. I think she does a lot with, like corporate power dynamic structure, which if you think of it, there's 6 CEOs in this band. We split everything 6 ways.
Right.
So it is also a business. And it's a business where, you're making business decisions, creative decisions, marketing decisions,
Mm-hmm.
things that affect your life for the rest of your children's lives, so there's a lot wrapped up in just starting a band and it becoming successful. It's a good problem to have, but
Yeah.
it was time to start dealing with those issues. So.
And the fact that you wanted to go back to Seattle to record, I mean, I think you can never underestimate the where part of the who, what, why, where. The where in recording makes a huge difference. Whether it be it's very comfortable or there's some uncomfortable things you got to reface.
Right.
Did you look at it as a place of familiarity and comfort, or was it like, ooh, I got to face a few ghosts?
Oh, you're really good. These are
I'm a
great
therapist.
questions.
No, I'm not. I'm not. I
Oh
could be.
man. Yeah. I mean, you definitely could be. Well, I think the initial, um, the main thing was that Maddie and Charity are, it's the first time that two people that both parents of a child have been in the same band, right? So
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Chris and Tyler had children before, but their wives are, not in this band. And so there was the first and main reason we went to Seattle was so that to, kind of make this as easy as possible for Maddie and Charity. Cause I think at that point, Francis was like, I don't know, 7 months old,
Mm-hmm.
8 months old, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And we really wanted to try and make these steps, like as much as possible, work for each band member. I mean, we had just been doing so much work on ourselves and kind
Mm-hmm.
of learning what it looks like if you don't, just because there's some workaholics that can like get it done and we'll go here and then they can do their stuff remote. It's like, no. We're not doing that anymore. Living Mirage was kind of Living Mirage was like a series of Band-Aids and patchwork, because this band, I don't know that even know that we realized how fractured our foundation was trying to make that record and get it finished. And we learned a lot from that
Mm-hmm.
process. And so Seattle was sort of a coming home, but also a like, like a way of showing like we're doing this all together, or we're not doing it at all.
Right.
And it was beautiful. I mean, we even had Frances there in the studio with us. She was like less than a year old and just like the cutest thing in the world.
Oh, Lord.
It changed the energy. We've never had that much time with a kid around and
Mm-hmm.
during the work, and
Yeah.
I loved it. I thought it was great. She's going to be touring with us, and
Oh,
we've
man.
never done that before either. Yeah, it's going to be
Cool.
so much fun for us. I feel for Cherry and Maddie. I'm sure it's going to be. I mean, they've never done it either. You know, there's going to be times where like they're probably going to have some meltdowns, and we're just going to have to try and be as supportive as possible. We'll have a nanny, of course, but yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
I think when you're in a band with, let's just say more than 3 people, I think the bar gets a little harder to sort of determine, hey, is this working for everybody? And are we at are we all looking at the same picture here? And we're all shooting for the same thing? Because it's just, you've just naturally put yourself at somewhat of a disadvantage by having 4 or 3 extra people saying, Jesus, I don't know, we're not one collective brain. We don't all feel the same way. But I think it takes a certain amount of trust, I would just imagine, with your bandmates to say, yeah, if this isn't feeling right, tell me, but are we sort of collectively on the same page,
Right. Yeah. Trust, another great key word there. I think of this album, and to me, it's the most bold record we've made, whether it's in terms of its length, in terms of the sonic palette, the sounds, even like lyricism. And I think it's because of so much work that we've done to start trusting each other again. Right. It sounds very obvious saying it now, but I didn't really put too much stock in, if until this person knows that I am respecting them and that I have their back on whatever they're going to say or throw at me, they're not necessarily going to like jump on board and want to like help command or help support what I'm doing. And so you get really diluted, watered down cafeteria food that way. If you're not having people want to be at the top of their game with you because they're not feeling seen, you're not going to get what you're looking for. And yeah, I think it just, people feel trusted again and seen and heard and respected. And it's just, you can hear it all over this record, and I can't wait.
Yeah. And sonically, it's like you said, sonically, I mean, it isn't in just one pocket, I mean, there's a lot of dynamics, and I'm always curious, and I always want to ask any writer, whether it's a writer of songs or anything, but do you feel you have to have like a sort of a healthy amount of sentimentality to be a good writer?
I've never heard that question before. I love this question. I'm obnoxiously sentimental.
Are you?
Yeah. I mean, the song Virginia, Wind of the Night is I think a shot in the, it's like pure sentimentality. For me, I was coming and going from Virginia quite a lot. I met my now wife 6 years ago, and she's from the Bay Area. And so I was like, really, because I have the sort of the more flexible, almost circusy job where it's like, I don't really work from one place. It really meant me joining her on the West Coast. And I would come back and visit my mom here. And also I've had this apartment here for the last 9 years. And I just really, I don't know. I think I was somehow surprised at how sentimental I was. Excuse me. Reliving all of these memories, walking down these sidewalks, and I mean, yeah, you guys get Minneapolis. You guys have humidity there. There's something about that, like just before a storm when the leaves are sort of turning up, and almost like it's flooding memories, from out of the sky into like your direct path. And I just got hit by them, and that's, yeah. I mean, it's almost like my little day in the life of walking around my neighborhood is that song, Virginia, Wind of the Night.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't know with other writers, but I mean, I don't know. What about Hemingway though? Hemingway seems like the least sentimental person, although maybe not true. He's just,
you know what I think? Yeah, I think that if you err on the side of not being sentimental, then your imagination is that much more broad, because you're truly, if you're not drawing from your own personal little warm space in your heart, you're just creating it out of thin air, and I think that's a gift in itself. But I'm always just curious, because I think sometimes I think a lot of people connect, this sentimental songwriting is, you always hear the word sentimental slop put together. And yet
Yeah.
I really feel like, if you're not writing from your own experiences and the things that have moved you or hurt you in the
Yeah.
past, and you're truly just imagining what it might be like for someone else, that's just a whole different
Mhm.
kind of writing.
Yeah. That's interesting. I feel like I've actually been trying to move closer or further from it solely being about something that I've gone through. I think the first three
Hmm.
records was really my only tool in the
Hmm.
toolbox.
Hmm.
And I
It's a
think
good
I did a
tool.
decent job at it, but
It's a
thank
good
you.
tool.
But yeah, I kind of got to the place where I was just like, um, hmm, okay, cool. Like the world has read your diary. Like what else you got? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, and again, that goes back to being an observer and a listener, through 2020 and beyond. Um, it's interesting the way the pendulum swings in such a way where, uh, as a writer, I guess I've always been a little shocked by anyone who has this. When someone says they have writer's block, it's like, are
Hmm.
you sure you shouldn't just be reading more right now? Like to me, I'm always reading and observing when I'm really tapped out as a writer. Like right now after
Yep.
this record, I have nothing to say
Hmm.
creatively. But because of that, I'm so satiated by a novel again all of a sudden,
Right.
or sitting reading at a park and watching people. I mean, it's to me, you sort of I don't understand writer's block. It's just like you're not supposed to be writing right now.
Right.
You know what I mean? Do something else. Like notice
Right.
the colors around you. Anyways, I'm
But what you
sure in
said,
10 years I will actually go through writer's block and I'll slap myself in the face for ever saying that. But
but what you
currently,
said about
yeah.
the idea of ostensibly like pouring out your personal diary for 3 years in
Mm-hmm.
3 records, the great side of that is to see how many complete strangers respond to it. Not that you
Totally.
have to base, because that's another territory you can get into, is that
Yeah.
need for the affirmation of strangers, but it's like that's a pretty special connection when you realize that something that happened very specifically to you and your take on it and your view is resonating with a complete stranger. What a feeling that is.
What's interesting though is initially that was I kind of struggled with that.
With what
Uh,
part?
with people taking ownership over it or relating
Yeah.
to it and like
Yeah.
I had set to me like just the total opposite of what I feel like it should have been. I remember those early days of fans coming up to me and talking about Lost in My Mind to them and what it was and what it was about. And to me, that was a very personal song about me and my brother and he had gone through some really serious hardships and like wasn't in a great place and it was my platform for my therapy.
Yep. Yep.
And
It
it's just
felt
interesting what
sacred to you. Yeah.
it did. Yeah. And now it's funny. I mean, now I feel very fortunate to have great, like, oh, that actually meant something just as is equivalent to someone else. And it's just, as soon as it's out into the world, it's just as much their story as it was yours.
Right.
It's been a long 12 years to sort of see the beauty in what we do as artists. Um, but yeah, it's funny um, how that evolved over time.
That is just interesting to hear because I talk to a lot of people and some people get there a little faster where they're like, no, once I've written it,
Mm,
once I've recorded it, it's kind of not mine anymore. And I mean, it is, but I get the sentiment of what somebody is saying by saying it's not mine anymore. It's out there. But I also get
yeah.
what you're saying too, where it's like, now this was about something very specific and yes, I'm glad you're at a place now where you can go, wow, that you can draw meaning from that, but you truly have no idea what you weren't in my head when I was writing that song.
Right. Yeah. Which kind of makes you think about, well, then what is it that you are getting from it as well as someone else? It's almost like the content, the perspective was yours and will also feel like theirs because, words, somehow reading the same story, whoever's reading it puts their
Hmm.
actual experience into that story and they're going, oh, I know what this is about. But there's something about the glue or the spark, the start, and the thing that orchestrated those things to go in the order that they did I think that is the thing, whether that's God or the universe,
Yep.
whatever that is the thing, is that to me, the reason why I never had ownership over it. I was a steward for a minute,
Sure.
but in general, like that, whatever that thing is that created the order in which is that song or that statement, that's the thing that like is all of us. I just happen to be the one who put the words in the order. It's such a fascinating thing. I'm just feel again and again so lucky to not only love what I do, but to just, it's genuinely like why I get up in the day. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's just more to be seen and more to say. And I think it's a good problem to have, where I'm never really, I never feel finished, you know?
Yeah. And I want to sort of follow up with what you said about, you being the writer of those words and the sort of vessel, if you will. Then what must it be like if someone says, I want to cover one of your songs? Like, what has anyone said, I want to cover and record on my own record one of your songs?
I don't know if we've ever gotten that.
You will.
Yeah.
You will.
Well, with social media now, you can sort of see it in a much less serious or a much less business type way. Like you could just see someone covering your song. And, honestly, for me, that's usually the first time where I actually really get more perspective on the song, because I don't have to sing it or think it in order to see it happening. So I get pretty like squirmish and uncomfortable every time that happens, because I'm faced with the honest depiction of what those lyrics were. Why did you put that word there? Until I see it played back for me, it's like, well, of course that's what I said.
Yeah.
And then you see somebody covering your song and it's like, oh God, I don't know.
I think it happens to people on every single level of success in songwriting. I will tell you, I talked to Trent Reznor about Johnny Cash recording his song One. And you would think Trent Reznor would just be like, I know it's a great song, but no, he was so humbled and brought to his knees by that song coming out of this larger than life and in a certain place in his life. And it was a really interesting way for him to tell me the story about how he reheard the song for the first time in a way that he had never imagined. He said, I can't believe this song that I wrote. I know exactly where I was when I wrote it, what crappy bedroom I was in. And then to see it filtered so many years later out through another artist in a way that he said was 50,000 times more powerful than he could have ever imagined. It was just, I just think that it happens, and it happens on every level. And
I just got goosebumps.
Yeah, no, I know, because I can think of that video right now, and oh dear God, yeah. I feel like you and I could just sort of have we even talked about anything like of substance?
I don't know. This is
I don't give a shit about anything really, other than just how do you feel? Okay, well, let me say this.
That's probably why we're getting along so well. It's on the same
so
way.
you actually then you're not coming to the Twin Cities until next fall, but I would imagine too it's pretty weird that you guys had to sit down and chart out a proper tour that's not just here and there dates. It's like, no, this is a big stretch.
Yeah, and we've been making corrections and changes to it literally for the last 2 years. I mean, we were due to go out in April of 2020. We specifically took off January, February, March of 2020 to then hit it again in April. Of course, that didn't work in our favor. Although, well, I don't want to say it didn't work in our favor, because it gave us something we needed that we didn't know. But so yes. It was almost like we're trying to predict the stock market in a way. It was like, well, should we go back out in, mid 2021 because people will be vaccinated? But because Maddie and Charity had like a 6-month-old, they were like, we don't feel comfortable with that yet.
No.
Can we put it off to 2022? And then you got the rest of the band going like, yeah, cool. Okay, we'll wait another half of a year to make money again, or to like do what we love doing again, so that you can raise your kid. It's been a really interesting democracy, taking, trying to figure out how best to do this. And to be honest with you, unless, as things are moving right now, it actually feels like everything kind of happened in the best way possible.
Right.
We were not interrupted finishing this record, which we've never had the luxury of. Maddie and Charity have had a few sort of private, off the radar gigs where we've had a nanny come out with us and kind of see like, what's it going to be like, without having to like commit to 3 weeks straight.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been it's unraveled in a really natural way. And it's a really great feeling to look at so many dates ahead. I mean, my wife and I are going through and it's like, okay, so I'll see you for 4 days in April and then maybe 5 days in May, unless you want to come to,
Right.
So on one hand, it's like, oh my gosh, I've been the indoor cat for 2.5 years. Like, do I have my claws anymore? Like, can I climb a tree? I don't know.
Indoor cats live longer.
I don't doubt it. I mean, watching my body change over the last 2.5 years is just like, whoa, 3 meals a day. That's what that means. Or like 8 hours of sleep. Jeez.
Right.
This is what my brain is supposed to feel like, function
exactly.
As. So hopefully I can carry some of these, healthier habits into the circus.
Yes.
But yeah, circus is going back out on the road and we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, the new record is Every Shade of Blue, and its release date is April 29th. It's the 5th album from The Head and the Heart. And I'll just leave you with one thing that I have been ruminating on. I watched this incredible documentary, I think it's on HBO maybe, about the playwright Arthur Miller. And at one point he just says, life is short, art is long.
That's
Keep
great.
that with you for today.
I will.
And it was a pleasure talking to you, and we can't wait to see you. Of course, it'll be next fall, and we may be wearing hazmat suits then. We don't know.
But we're gonna do it. Damn it,
we're doing it. Thank you, Jonathan. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, Mary, thank you so much. This has been a highlight of my day. And
whoa,
seriously, and this is my fourth. I did kind of quite a few of these back to back today, and
I know.
Anytime I do that, I get a little, I don't mind doing them. Actually, I enjoy doing them. My only fear is always like, well, what if I'm not interesting and I have a cold from my niece and I'm in sweatpants, but I think it's going great. I think we did good. You did great. I loved your question. I feel like
if you and I were going to have, lunch tomorrow, I wouldn't call you the night before and go, hey, okay, Jonathan, here's what I want to talk about. And here's what I think I'm going to ask you. I'd rather just go tapes rolling and let's just have a conversation.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have a great rest of your afternoon.
You too.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.